Hello, and welcome to We Read Allegedly, where we allegedly read books. I am Celeste, in case this is the first episode you've ever listened to. I do not normally sound this deep voiced, but it is a thing for today, so we're gonna run with it.
She's gonna sing some Ursula and poor unfortunate souls.
You know, I might, except for I was laughing at work today, and then I started coughing, and so that was not a fun thing.
No. I've seen Celeste on the laugh cough the first time I visited Louisiana, in fact, and Dallas was worried I might have murdered his wife at one point.
It is possible. It is possible. The voice that you hear is our male
The
protagonist.
token male.
He is the
Depends
one
on the
who,
episode.
true. He is the one who gives us the male points of view most of the time.
Good night, kids.
That other voice you hear is Squid.
Hello.
And so we are going to be talking about The Girl Who Loved Tom Gord to kick off our year of King. But before we get into that, Squid, what are we doing?
With our lives? Because boy, oh boy, do I not know.
I'm just waiting to die.
Well, aren't we all? Just
Nobody
kidding.
makes it out of life alive.
Well, yeah. I'll put down this book that I'm trying to remember what happened in. And hey, guys.
Hey.
It's hey. Hi. It's
Hi.
us. We're here. It's January. Or is it? It'll be February, I guess.
Yeah,
it
it'll
was
be
January,
February.
but it wasn't January when we were recording last time. Shh. Surprise. It's February. The year has started. And, last month we talked about the year in review, so I figured what fun it would be to talk about what kind of reading goals we have for the year. Or maybe you don't have any goals at all and you're just here. I don't know. I don't know what you guys are up to. Mostly because the book I'm currently reading I can't talk about because you guys aren't caught up to me.
Oh, you're talking about Hunger of the Gods.
I haven't had time.
I haven't started it.
That's problematic. I've started it. I'm 61 pages in.
I'm gonna be real with y'all. Mr. Curtis Jackson kind of owns my brain space at the moment, so
That's fair.
That's fair. We are, yes, Hunger of the Gods, the sequel to The Shadow of the Gods. We're doing a buddy read. So far, I'm reading and I have buddies. And someday they'll also be reading with me.
that sounded vicious.
Well, no, I've just had a lot of time to read, so I've cruised through this book in a way I did not expect to. So
I will say this is a book recommendation that still roots back to your own book recommendations. So
thank you, self. I will say this is not a spoiler. I've already gotten off track from what I said we should do today and said I wasn't going to talk about this book, but here we are. I'm not liking this one as much.
Uh-oh.
Not because the story is not good. I'm noticing just like writing things he does that are bothering me a little bit.
That's no bueno.
I wonder if it's suffering from the sequel issue.
See, I was wondering if it was suffering from the trilogy thing, because I was wondering if he was rushing through this book.
Right. Well, you know how, like, if there is a really, really good first movie, the second movie is and then the third movie is fanatic. Fantastic.
And the
Tell
prequels.
that to the Empire
I
Strikes
didn't
Back,
say that it
madam.
applied to.
The prequels are garbage. No. But the second, and plus, let's call it what it is. The prequels were their own trilogy.
But,
the
yes,
original trilogy
oftentimes
was its
sequels
own
do have
trilogy, and the sequels were their own trilogy.
The story is
welcome
just as good in this. I'm
We
excited
Read
for you guys
Allegedly,
to
where we
see
talk about Star Wars.
all my little notes that I've been diligently putting into Storygraph.
I will be so excited to see those because the last time we did a buddy read,
Yeah, I didn't put a single one in there, huh?
Nobody did.
I'm very sorry.
Hey,
I've actually been putting notes in this time.
I need to
appreciate
apologize. I'm really bad at this whole buddy read. Like the whole buddy read thing is new to me. Like since we
Go
started
to
this podcast.
Storygraph, John.
To be fair, it's also new to me because the last time me and Celeste did a buddy graph, I didn't actually talk with my buddy about it.
You mean buddy read?
Yeah, whatever. You know what I meant.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just I find he's repeating words a lot in like close proximity, and it's really jumping out at me. So I don't know if he just had a different editor.
Hey,
or
that's an
refreshing.
idea.
I
Let's
don't know.
talk about authors that we generally
Hate?
like that we
Oh.
started. Oh, let's talk about authors that we started out enjoying quite a bit, but after repeated exposure, we kind of turned off to because of writing situations.
So that is a great conversation for another podcast.
I was just about to say, we're just off. Let's go. Let's just keep going down this rabbit trail.
Hey, I am ready because I had Ted Decker locked and loaded.
I am down for the conversation. I am not down for it tonight.
Fair.
Or let me rephrase that.
The first thing I was going to say is Neil Gaiman, but I didn't like him at the beginning, so.
Well.
Oops. Just kidding. We'll take that out. I was going to say we love you, but we don't. I also have a lot less to say about this book because I was really expecting it to be happening in the alleged reads portion of the podcast, so we might need to fill some space later. Anyway, all right. Resolutions. We were talking about resolutions.
Were we?
No, we never really got there, but I said the word.
I'm so proud of you. That's a big word.
Thank you. I know. Can't spell it, so don't ask me. Reading goals, reading resolutions, maybe just a book you're excited to read. I don't know, interpret it how you will. Maybe just a book you're excited for me to not be mad at. I don't know.
I have no reading resolutions. I embrace the chaos.
Do you set a reading goal each year?
I do with Goodreads. So I have a goal of 150 because I learned after last year that 175 is not possible if I'm not reading a lot of comics.
Fair.
And I've not been reading a lot of comics or a lot of manga, so my quick reads are few and far between.
Whereas mine is kind of read some. Like I'm still trying to build back into getting my appetite for reading again.
That's a healthy goal.
Yeah, I mean, I have been enjoying. I know we're not doing the alleged reads, but I came in ready to talk alleged reads. So
hey, you can talk about your alleged read.
I have been enjoying Curtis Jackson's Hustle Harder, Hustle Smarter memoir / self-help book. It has he's really been kind of, and that's the reason why some things are going to happen in the conversation that we've had tonight, that we're going to have tonight rather, and the girls are looking at me like, what? You'll understand when we get there.
Okay.
Maybe I won't understand. You don't know.
Oh no, you will.
You don't know where I'm at cognitively.
I'll make it very understandable. But it's been very good for me. He influenced me to get serious about pursuing some therapy, which I did tonight. Hooray!
Whoop, whoop.
So 50 cents.
We support mental health.
50 cent put me in therapy. To do with that what you will.
I need that to be on a t-shirt.
And if this makes its way to you, St. Curtis, patron saint of Shreveport, Louisiana, hey, I'll take a shout out. It's cool. Or I'll even let you use that. 50 cent put me in therapy. Anyway,
license it to us, thanks.
Yeah, just give us a nod.
And
let us know what you're reading. We'd love to know what you're reading right now.
By nod, we mean money.
Yes.
What he's reading, probably
the
48 Principles of Power. That's like his big book. He talks about it quite a bit.
Is it the only book he reads? Because if so, I have some problems with that.
No, but those are the types of books.
He's a slow reader.
Those are the types of books he reads. He actually talks about the books he reads in that book. So if you want to know what 50 Cent reads,
no, I want to know what he's reading right now. I want to know his alleged read.
Well, I can't help you with that.
That's why I want him to add us on Facebook because we're not on Twitter.
But I am genuinely excited about the idea of reading some of the stuff that's in my backlog now. So
He could join our Discord.
He could join our Discord. He could join our Goodreads group.
Bro. If he joined any of that, I could.
We'd be confused. To be fair, we'd be very confused.
I'd be into it though. I'm into it.
What would 50 Cent's Discord name be?
What's Discord handle for 50 Cent?
Probably just Fitty.
Probably. Okay.
Paid for it. Paid a lot of money for that.
But as in the way of resolutions, though, I do want to do more than my 3 books I did last year. So
that is a noble goal, and dare I say, attainable.
I am going to make an attempt to do almost all the books on the list this year.
Heyo.
Yeah,
I support that as well.
I bet you do. So yeah,
we'll see how many of the books on the list actually end up in the podcasts.
Oh,
list is subject to change as we read these books.
Yes, let last year be a disclaimer for this year. The reading list that we put together at the beginning of the year is suggested reading.
Yes.
It is subject to change further down the lines given current media events as well as other circumstances that are beyond our control, such as book availability and
also potentially book content, as all of Squid's books this year were books she hasn't read yet. So
there's that as well.
Yep. So what I'm hearing is before I start any of your books, go look at the content.
Well, that's why, spoiler alert, in the future, one of the books I picked is Beloved by Toni Morrison. We already kind of talked about this a little bit, but I will be letting you know if you can read that book before you read it, Celeste.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. And then I'll let the podcast know if we're reading that book.
I was about to say there's some things I remember about the movie because I had seen that movie where that's one of the almost every book that we have on the list this year. Comment comes.
Yeah, this is again such a sidetrack, but it is highly regarded as like one of the best books, especially to understand the situation in which it's written around.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping that the part you mentioned that's in the movie is actually just the setup and not in great detail. So we'll find out.
All I know is I saw more of Oprah Winfrey than I wanted to.
Well, it's a book, so you won't be seeing anyone, and especially not Oprah. I think. I'm pretty sure. I don't believe Oprah is in this book.
So what are your goals, Squid?
So it's just like, I need you guys to get off the podcast now. This train is going in one direction right now, and it's
am desperately trying to control the squirrels that are in my brain right now, and they want to play with y'all. And I have one responsible squirrel that's like, we have a goal for this podcast. Let's bring it back.
I feel like normally that's my job, and tonight I'm just ready to go.
I am too.
Someone's got to be mom.
Celeste, let those squirrels go.
No.
We'll never talk about this book if that happens. We'll be recording for an hour and a half, and we still won't know what we were talking about. Anyway,
that's the fun of a book club in the first place.
It's true.
It's fair.
I brought the wine. Yes, I made some reading goals for this year. We'll see if all of them happen. So far, I'm succeeding on some and failing in others. As I've started this year off strong and already read 8 books.
Ooh.
And my low bar goal, not a low bar because it's a high bar considering some reading goals, but after what I read last year, my goal is to read 52 books in a year, which is a book a week essentially. But then I made a book journal this year and I put like a bookshelf page on it. And then I realized after I made that bookshelf page that I put 80 books on that page. So we're going to see if we can color in all those books.
There you go.
So we're somewhere in the middle between 52 and 80 is the goal. My goal is to finish all of our We Read Allegedly books on time. And not late.
Squid, speaking of resolutions and year-end stuff that we didn't touch on the last episode, did we ever get the final tally that Mama Squid ended on for her book count last year?
Yes, somewhere. Hold on.
She was at like 152?
It was a lot, yeah. I just looked it up, too.
Dear listeners, if we have encouraged you to read, please let us know so we can name drop you as often as we talk about Mama Squid.
132.
100.
Dang.
Gloria Jesus. Okay, so that's the benchmark. If anybody wants to impress me, beat Mama Squid's high score. And Mama Squid, if you're out there, I challenge you to beat your own high score.
Well, she's reading, I feel like, a little less this year because she was like, I feel like I've read a lot, and now I don't know what to read. I've read everything.
I can
so-
give her Rex. She should contact me.
I can give her recommendations too, although if she's got taste like you, Squid, I'm not entirely certain she would enjoy what I have to throw out.
It'd be
So far
fun to
she does.
try, though.
So far, she's got. There's only been a few we've disagreed on, but
Like Shark Heart.
like Shark Heart, yeah. Well, my 2 mid-range goals that I might not meet. I'm attempting to read. Of the books I read, 80% of them should be physical.
Oh,
I will count ebooks as I have to actually hold it in my hand.
So then what is not physical then?
audio.
Audiobooks. I did
Okay.
a lot of audiobooks last year, and I like to do more of the actual physical books I own. Which brings me to my next goal, which is of the books I read, I'd like 70% of them to books I currently own. And then the impossible goal of the year that I'll probably fail, I don't know, next week is buy less than 12 new books. We'll see how it goes.
I have no such ambitions.
Yeah.
You should just buy books for me then, and then
Book
I'll be
log
good.
golf came from the fact that I have so many books.
Me too.
Okay.
You know what? When do you guys normally do book log golf?
October?
It's normally September to December.
If I can find my groove by then, I might play book log golf this year.
That's fine. And even if you want to start playing it and then determine halfway through you're like, this is not for me, you can just message me and I'll drop your name off the list. So okay, well those are our book resolutions. So
As well as about 16 other things.
This is what happens when you read, though. You get together with people, you talk books, and then next thing you know, it's facial hair.
You're shaving off your mustache.
Let's start talking about The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon.
Yeah, so that.
Okay, let me read the synopsis real quick. On a 6-mile hike on the Maine, New Hampshire branch of the Appalachian Trails, 9-year-old Tricia McFarlane quickly tires of the constant bickering between her older brother Pete and her recently divorced mother. But when she wanders off by herself and then tries to catch up by attempting a shortcut, she becomes lost in a wilderness full of peril and terror. As night falls, Tricia has only her ingenuity as a defense against the elements and only her courage and faith to withstand her mounting feelings. For solace, she tunes her Walkman to broadcast the Boston Red Sox baseball games and follows the gritty performance of her hero, relief pitcher Tom Gordon. When her radio's reception begins to fade, Tricia imagines that Tom Gordon is with her, protecting her from the all-too-real enemy who has left a trail of slaughtered animals and mangled trees in the dense, dark woods.
Wild. I can't tell you how interesting it is when you don't read synopsis until after the book's done.
So, it was my book pick.
Actually, it was Stephen King's book.
Yes, but I'm the one that brought it to the podcast, mostly because this was the first Stephen King book I ever read.
Did we mention this at the beginning? This is our first of
Year of
6
King?
Stephen King books we will be reading this year.
Yes, so we will be very opinionated about King books.
Or we'll just, by the end, turn this into a Stephen King book club, and that's all we're reading for which we probably could. He has a lot.
I mean, I don't know if I'm down for that. I read a lot of other things.
Well, you'll have no choice but the end, Celeste. Sorry.
Fair. Okay, so does anybody else have thoughts?
I have thoughts, and you're not
I was
gonna
like,
like
I hope
them.
so.
That's okay.
I spent 2 weeks trying to find an audiobook for this. That's
So
my
that was this.
experience. That's my experience with this book.
I have the audiobook.
How great for you.
Like, it's on Audible.
Yeah, I mean, if I wanted to buy it.
You don't buy books for this podcast?
No, I don't.
You're not sending yourself into financial ruin like we are?
No, I don't. Usually I can find it on Hoopla or Libby, but
Wild.
they don't have the audiobook versions on there at all. And I did go looking for ways to do it. And if I had the extra scratch, I probably would have bought it. But January is my recertification month, and I have to pay money to AAPC that I don't normally have to pay every month.
I wish you had said something sooner.
Nah, it's cool. It's cool. It's cool.
Or just gotten the physical one. It's tiny.
I would have bought you the audiobook.
Nah, I would have declined that. I'm not going to have you spend money on me like that. However, I will.
Like a $3 buy.
Madam, it's fine. I am here for the ride. This is what We Read Allegedly is, isn't it? That's why I felt okay to show up for this.
That's fair.
And it's also part of the reason why I scrambled to try to postpone outside of only having gotten 2 hours of sleep the night prior yesterday. I was still trying to find an audiobook I could listen to at double speed to try to cram through it. So
It legitimately is only a 6-hour audiobook.
I know, and if I double speeded it, I could have taken it out easy. But you know, support your libraries, everybody. Mine's getting rid of Hoopla, so pretty soon Libby's going to be the only thing I have.
That's not
Libby's
good.
the only thing I use.
I use Hoopla for a lot of audiobooks.
What?
Well,
I don't know why I didn't like Hoopla as much, but I did.
I find more stuff on Libby than Hoopla, so it doesn't hurt me that much, but it takes an option off the table for me for this podcast, so I might have to start using my Audible credits a little bit more business-wise instead of going towards 50 cent with my credits, so
that's fair. Well, Squid, did you have thoughts?
I did. I wish, again, our original plan for this episode was that this was just going to be a short introduction, and we switched some things up last minute, so I didn't fully prepare a full episode of thoughts.
Oh, good.
I will say, this was, I think I mentioned this last year. I have not done a lot of Stephen King. I've not read, in fact, I think this is technically my first Stephen King book, because the only thing I've read prior has been his Richard Bachman stuff. Which apparently, as I was told the other day, he had a whole introduction in The Long Walk, which we're doing this year, about how Richard Bachman writes and how he writes and how they're different. So I don't really feel like I had a Stephen King experience with that book until I read this one, and I went, people ain't kidding. He's a good author.
He really is.
Okay, so legit, is this your first Stephen King book?
I think it is. I have to go scroll through some stuff real quick, but I'm pretty sure I've had 11/22/63 on my list.
Mm-hmm.
And
Did you watch that show?
No, but I was going through a time travel phase for a little while, and I even got it on Libby once, but I didn't actually end up listening to it. But yeah, I don't think I've actually.
Didn't you say that you read The Running Man? Was that Bachman or was
Yep,
that?
that's Bachman.
Oh wow.
Yep. Oh, and I read his book on writing, but that's nonfiction.
Nah, that's not a Steve. So wow. Okay, so you have that to share with Celeste now. That was your first Stephen King book.
I will say it is not his stereotypical book, if that makes sense.
It wasn't what I was expecting, but it was more just like as I was reading it, I was like, oh, you're actually engaging when you're writing, huh? You're actually like good at suspense and interest and horror, even though I don't know if this is actually a young adult book, is it?
No, it is not.
Okay, because it really reads like one.
It does.
In a way that I was like, yeah, this is fine for young adults to read and is also scary.
Which is why I think my dad gave it to me when I was 16.
Well, not only that, but the way Stephen King writes, he was so into pulp back in when he was a child, there's just that pulp fiction type paperback novel sort of thing that as a child, like he gets into it when when he does his foreword for Salem's Lot. And he talks about how his mom would bring home all these different books from the library, and she wouldn't bar him from reading anything. But she would always let him know when she thought something was trash.
Fair.
And something like that. So he got really into like the pulp horror and the stuff as a kid, and he talks a lot of the times in trying to incorporate those feelings he had as a child reading all these books into how he writes. And I think that's kind of what you're picking up on.
Yeah. He definitely writes in a manner that is easy to follow, if that makes sense. Like, he's not dumbing things down, but he's also not overcomplicating things unless they need to be, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yep.
He tends to write from a sense of wonder. If I had to put kind of like a kind of a flavor on it.
I legitimately had the thought that it's amazing to me how well this old man,
This
wrote
52-year-old man?
wrote a 7-year-old little girl, or 9-year-old, however
9.
old
Yeah,
she.
almost 10.
Yeah, like, I'm like,
But she's
I
big
could
for her age.
big for her age. I could see, like, as an adult now reading this, I could see 9-year-olds I know doing things like this.
That
Not
was the
some of
point
them.
I was going to make. Yeah.
Some of them definitely would be dead in the woods.
Well,
Because they would not know
maybe.
what to eat and what not to eat. And I can't blame
I
them because
found-
I wouldn't know. The first time I read this, I was so confused because I didn't know at the time that people really just went out and walked in the woods.
You
I
could
thought
do
that was stuff for movies. Why? It's hot. There's bugs. Why?
There's a lot of bugs in this book.
There's a lot of bugs in this book.
Somebody grew up in a city.
No. I grew up.
Just in a very hot state with not a lot of places to
Yeah.
walk.
That's fair. That's fair. Like, okay, so
There's
think-
not a.
I think this is a regional thing for you then, Celeste.
Oh yeah,
because-
definitely.
Because
Forest preserves are a big thing in Illinois.
I was about to say, up here in Washington, like we were running around out in the woodsy areas all the time when I was growing up.
So it's also a I am allergic to everything issue because like we
Yeah.
have wooded areas, and I have a friend who her parents own a ton of land, and we'd run around and in their huge, like they have at least 2 or 3 acres, huge backyard. And they had goats and things, and like
And then you pay the price.
and I would just never be able to breathe. And
Yeah.
I would feel sick by the end of the day. And so the idea of someone purposefully being like, I'm going to go walk on a trail. I'm like, that's weird. Now, as an adult, I realized that we do have several national parks here in Louisiana, or state parks rather. And there are walking trails and hiking trails and fishing and all of that you can
Yeah.
go and do, but it's just it as a 16-year-old, it blew my mind.
Yeah.
Like, why would you choose to do this?
Why would you want to be out there with
Like,
bugs?
I spent time outside because that's where my friends were. I
Yeah.
did not choose to do it. I just didn't want to be bored in the house, or I had been kicked out of the house.
Fair. I was definitely also going to make the point that this 50-year-old man wrote a young girl better than I ever could. So
It's wild. Like, sir, did you talk to a 9-year-old?
I'm sure he did. Again, and I do think his book on writing counts because it's a pretty phenomenal book. And also, he's an absolute lunatic of a man.
Apparently, he's also very nice.
Yeah, I have heard he's just a great person, but also a lunatic that just every day sits down and writes.
Yeah,
I
I was about to say, if you wrote as prolifically as this
Yeah.
guy does, you would be good at writing anything. I mean,
Yeah.
like, how many books does he actually have to his name?
hang on, I can find that out. I will share this one story just to share how.
All right, so you share the story. Squid's going to look up the numbers.
Okay, perfect. It just how wild this man is. My dad went to a book signing,
Mm-hmm.
like in the 70s, 80s. He was stationed up in Boston. Stephen King was having a book signing. He went, "Hey, I'm going to go." And so he went and he pitched his story that he has been writing ever since I've known him. He's still writing it. It's not done yet. Fascinating story. He's still working on it. And Stephen King was like, "Hey, you should come to the house and we'll talk shop." And my dad was like, "Yeah, cool." So Stephen King gave him his address. I was like, "Yeah, come by." And my dad got shipped out to Germany or something right after that. So he never went. But
Dang.
just the fact that he was like, "Here's my address." Yeah. Total stranger at a book event.
When I meet people like that, like that's kind of the person I want to be,
I don't. My dad could have been a psycho.
They both could be, to be fair.
Indeed.
It's like this book I read once, which is kind of in the vein of Stephen King. It's playing with the idea of why you don't hitchhike, right? Because everyone's always like, you could pick up a killer, you could get picked up by a killer.
Exactly.
So the book, it's just a short story, and it's just the premise of if the killer that is hitchhiking is picked up by the killer who picks up hitchhikers. So, and they try to kill each other.
I think that sounds hysterical.
It was pretty funny and then pretty gruesome. Real fast.
For some reason, that reminds me of the movie Traitor. Did you ever see that one?
Mm-mm.
Starring I can't remember his name now. The guy who played Blodger from the Ocean's 11 movies.
I don't recognize that.
I couldn't tell you. That's
the black guy
been a
with the
minute.
British accent.
Yeah,
that
I can see his face.
Things up.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, he's in that. He plays as
It's really funny because I was just talking about him the other day. I don't know why, but
yeah, but he plays as a Islamic CIA agent that's investigating some impending terrorist attack on U.S. soil post 9/11, and he couldn't stop it, so he ended up having. I'm spoiling this movie, so if you ever intend to watch it, plug your ears now. But he ends up having all these suicide bombers that are planning this attack on American soil end up going on the same bus all together because he couldn't stop the attack, so they had them all blow up the same bus. Where even the bus driver was one of the suicide bombers that was attacking.
Nature finds a way.
So it was. I don't know. For some reason, it just reminded me of that scenario of just, if you can't, then just work with it and make the best outcome you can.
Speaking of movies, this man's books have been turned into a lot of movies.
Oh.
Some of which I didn't even realize were his books.
Did you get
some of which are actually good?
I do have a number of books as well. So he has written 65 novels, 9 nonfiction books, 19 screenplays or teleplays, 16 others, and over 200 short stories compiled into 12 book collections. So that's a lot. It's a lot of books.
If you look up the word prolific in the dictionary, you'll see Stephen King's face.
I literally was like, I'm pretty sure he's written more than James Patterson, and James Patterson has written his books with 16 other people. So
I just discovered a book that I want to add to my resolutions.
Oh,
it's like I didn't realize Cujo was by him.
You didn't know Cujo
I knew
was his?
For the record, if that's on the list, I don't think it is, but if that's on the list, I will not, because the dog does die.
Yeah.
The dog needs
Spoiler.
to die, though.
The dog
that's
does
fine. I can
The Green Mile.
The Green Mile was phenomenal.
Shawshank Redemption.
Great movie.
My dad had right after I read The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, the book we're actually supposed to be talking about.
Oh, yeah.
He also had The Green Mile, and he was like, it's scary, but it's not too scary. And the way
I don't know. That scene's pretty brutal when they electrocute that guy.
Yes, but I was reading it, not
Oh, okay. All right.
not watching it. It was also like at this point 17.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
but he got them as they were coming out. So he has all these teeny tiny
He's got the novellas.
Yes.
Mhm.
He has all of the novellas that make up the book.
I bet you those will probably be worth a pretty penny now, being as they don't sell them like that anymore.
They won't, because I don't think they're in good condition.
Oops.
But
Fair.
they
Yeah,
were
I
a
did not
wild ride.
realize that was his either.
Which one?
The Green Mile.
Oh,
Oh yeah. So, I just discovered there's a book coming out in March called
I was scrolling and this one is called Just After Sunset, and I was like, he did not write it before sunset. I was like, wait, that's different. That's a different.
I think I have Just After Sunset somewhere. It's a
Do you
collection.
also have Before Sunset?
No.
No. Well, shame.
He I think it's a collection of short stories, if I remember right.
Looks like it is in his collection.
He has another book coming out this year.
That makes sense.
Yeah. The man sits down and writes every day
For 8 hours, yeah.
for 8 hours.
Apparently at one point he told someone that he wanted to make writing his job, so he decided to treat it like a job. So like he works 9 to 5
Yep.
writing.
Again, read his book on writing. He has some really good advice in there. He really broadened my scope of how I would write and how I wanted to write. Anyway, about this book he wrote. I I dog-eared like 3 pages, and I don't know why I dog-eared any of them.
Oh good.
Because I forgot to put any notes with them.
You forgot to put why.
I had to put why. I underlined one sentence on them, but it wasn't even a complete sentence. So I don't
I'm
know what I was smoking when I did it.
Curious as to what the sentence was.
Good question. Let me find the page. Oh, not that one. Yeah, it's not even a full grammatical sentence. I just underlined to come on in the bottom of the 9. That's it. Which I book-eared once again, not the phrase. I dog-eared several pages before the actual sentence it comes from, but apparently I only wanted to underline half the sentence. So
It's fair. I did appreciate that. Again, I was very confused as a teenager because I didn't understand baseball. I still don't, but I like the extent of my knowledge for baseball was Angels in the Outfield.
yeah,
So,
it took me a while into this book to realize that Tom Gordon was a real person.
yeah, that also took me a while. I think it would have been a few years before I realized that Tom Gordon was really a real player.
That's a real man.
I don't want to get too much into it because I really want John to read this at some point.
Please do. I think this book does a phenomenal job of keeping it scary, keeping it real, and also putting it in a context where you're like, yeah, if I were 10, same.
And
I also want to put it out there to anybody who's listening to this saying, that John doesn't read the flippin' books. Why is he on that podcast? Like legit, I put in time trying to locate a copy of this that I would be able to consume because I just don't have time to read physical copies.
that's fair.
So I legit did try to find a copy for this episode. So
Spiritual takeaways?
you alive, Celeste?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right.
I'd been holding in a cough for like 30 minutes. And
Sometimes you
got
gotta let it go.
Sometimes you gotta let it out. I will say before we get into spiritual takeaways that I think it also does a good job of playing with the fear of what's just beyond your sight.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Like the things you notice out of the corner of your eye.
It's also like the imagined fears are always worse than
Right. Than reality.
the anxiety makes things a lot worse than what they really are most of the time.
Or dehydration.
Or yeah, that also
That'll
does
do
not
it.
help.
So I had spiritual takeaways for this book, and I cannot think of them at the moment.
It's okay. I had one. I did also, the line that I half underlined because I didn't underline the whole thing was when, this isn't my spiritual takeaway, but it's kind of connected to God, not to my spiritual takeaway. So, is when she's talking to Tom Gordon in her head, and one of the things they talk about is like, what is God's nature?
Mm,
And so the
yeah.
phrase is, God shows up and always comes in at the bottom of the ninth. So like at the last minute, that's when he shows up and helps out, so to speak. That's not my spiritual takeaway, but that's just where that quote actually comes from.
There was a lot of discussion about God in the book.
Yes. A lot of like praying. How do I pray? Who do I pray to? Is he even real? What is he? Is he the subliminal?
Was it subliminal or is it subaudible?
Subaudible.
I think it was
something.
I think it was the subaudible. I remember the first time I read it being very confused, and my dad had to explain it to me again because I was like, I don't understand. Again, 16, 17. Like, I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know what's going on here. And
Yes,
so
because her father does say the subaudible. And then there's a line, which I did dog ear, so it plays off of yours. It's like you knew what I dog eared. In which she said, now I need to find the path. And please, God, help me find the path, she thought, and closed her eyes. It was the God of Tom Gordon she prayed to, not her father subaudible.
Yes.
Which I also think is nice, because it's not her being like, Tom Gordon, help me. It's just her saying, I'm praying to the God of that guy, because he seems like something's going right over there.
Right. It's kind of, it's interesting because it takes the concept of someone who has no concept of God, doesn't know what they believe, and they're like, you know what? They seem to be doing it right. Let me try this out. And I feel like there's people out there that could actually be considered their testimony. Like they had moments like that.
Yeah, it always makes me think of, and I feel like he probably wouldn't like if his song was being used in this context. But Hoser's song "Foreigner's God," where the line in the song is just screaming the name of a foreigner's God, the purest expression of grief, which I always just think is like such a great line because it's in those either fear, grief, whatever, when people often cry out God's name, even though prior to that they'd be like, not real, don't need that. Don't think Hosier necessarily is on that train, so to speak, but
well, it would not be the first time that anything Geek Devotions adjacent has taken things that were not intended to point you back to God and using it to point you back to God.
Like Tom Gordon pointing at the skies.
To be fair, I mean, God made everything. So if God made everything, then everything already points back to God anyway.
It's true.
So
anyway, my real spiritual takeaway was just because I couldn't think of another one at the moment. It's just how easy it is to take that first step off the path. And then once you take that step off the path, how hard it is to find the path again.
Yep.
That whole narrow and wide and destruction and all that.
Exactly. So I actually think that might have been what I had been thinking of using as my spiritual takeaway because it is pretty blatant.
Yeah, I didn't have to work too hard for it.
No. But again, there was a lot of discussion.
Yeah.
About things. I will say I had a different perspective. Again, as this is going back to the book and not from the spiritual takeaways, but it's just how my brain's working tonight, and I can only control its scrolls for so long. She talks about the God of the lost, and it's interesting because as a teenager when I read it, I was like, "Oh, that's the bad guy." And as an adult, I'm like, "But is it?" Like,
I
was
don't
it
know.
protecting her?
He says some pretty nasty things, though.
Was it protecting her? Like, guiding her to different areas? Was the image of Tom Gordon that was talking to her actually the God of the Lost, just appearing before her how she needed to see it? John is now intrigued by this book.
I don't know. I feel like we could talk about that for a long time because you could two different manifestations of two very different things.
Yes, oh, very much so. But it
And
is
also in like the far removed, to be like the good angel and the bad angel is just both
right,
sides of the psyche, you know?
right. So I don't know, just a thought that I had when I was reading it,
Yeah.
and because we were talking about all of that, it stirred my brain up enough that I was like, oh yeah, I had this thought.
Which is like see, when I read it, I was just like, wow, what a really good full personification of anxiety and fear.
Mm,
What just a phenomenal way to put that.
I don't think I even thought about it like that. I was more thinking about the hallucinogenic properties.
Yeah, because like we kind
Spoken
of
like a true hippie, Celeste.
like,
It's fair.
the Tom Gordon in my mind was kind of we come up with the things we need to comfort ourselves,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's we don't need to come up with the things that make us feel terrible. They just kind of show up. They're
My
just there.
imagination can definitely come up with things.
Yeah. So a lot of the things this God of the Lost says is like those things that you start to think when it's like, 12 at night and you're sitting in the dark by yourself and you're like, am I a terrible person?
God of the Lost is the intrusive thoughts.
Does everyone hate me?
Is there a camera in my air vent?
Exactly. It was just from like the first comment, I was like, oh, anxiety. She's here.
Yes, that was definitely the sassy girl. The one who was that's who I associated with like the devil and angel on the shoulder. The one who was like, no.
She's just a mean girl on your shoulder instead of a
Yes.
devil.
Lindsay Lohan is just chilling there.
Just all four of them, in fact. Just
So, okay. Well, I think we've said about all we're going to say or can say. Should say.
managed to draw it out a lot longer than I thought we could.
There were a lot of squirrels.
There were a lot of squirrels.
That's okay.
Good luck with the beginning of this episode.
You're welcome.
Oh, let me pull up what we're reading next week so I actually know what to say at the end of this.
Or rather,
podcast.
thank you. My brain is fried. I said I was editing this tonight. I am not.
LOL.
Just kidding. To quote another book we've read, I have heavy boots today, and that means I
Aw.
should sleep.
You should. No one likes heavy boots. She had heavy boots in this book.
She did have heavy boots in this book. John's like, I don't understand this.
It's cool.
I get to read
I'll
what's
take
his
my
face.
lumps.
I
get to see if I like this guy better the second time.
Oh, are you looking up the...
Yeah.
What our next book is? Okay. Well, all that being said, so long, and thanks for all the fish.
Bye.
I swear I'll read next time.
Oh, I know. Yeah, you will. It's your book, so you better.
We're gonna be real mad if you don't read your book.
We Read Allegedly is part of the Devoted Geeks Network, devoted to letting you know that you're loved. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts every first Saturday of the month. This month, we read The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon by Stephen King. You can join us next month as we read The Devil in Silver by Victor Lavelle. We'll see you then. Do-do-do-do-do-do. I'm prepping. Leave me alone. This is my process.